I'm Professor Zach, and I am here to explain the Commonize Costs Privatize Profits game. Wow, that is a mouthful. Let's just refer to it as the CCPP game. It is a segment of game theory addressing profit maximization strategies when a shared, common resource is involved. The CCPP game specifically occurs in the tragedy of commons, which I explained in another episode. The tragedy of commons is a scenario that involves multiple parties, which can be individuals, groups, or corporations. The scenario must have a shared common resource, such as underground drinking water, open land for cattle grazing, or a body of water with fish. And lastly, there is no governance of the shared resource. If a scenario contains all three of these conditions, then the CCPP game says that a player will all aim to commonize the costs across all participants, or in other words, create an externality in which there is an adverse impact from their actions, but that impact is spread across all parties indifferently. And at the same time, the player will privatize the profits for themselves, or in other words, extract as much as they can from the shared resource, with the profits accruing to themselves, and not others. The player will do all this while not informing the other players of their actions. Let's walk through an example, so that I can better explain the player's actions, and more importantly, why they engage in such actions. We will use an example of a public lake that is currently full of fish, but there is a finite amount of them. The fish in the lake serve as the common, shared resource. There are no regulations governing the amount of fish that a person can extract from the lake. Overfishing in a short period of time, before the fish can reproduce, will deplete the population of fish. If this occurs, then all the fishermen will catch less fish as time goes on. In our scenario, the fish from the lake serves as the primary source of food for the citizens of the nearby town. The people are happy and enjoying their lives. However, the CCPP practices of the fishermen resulted in a shortage of fish. Assuming that there are no suitable substitutes for the fish, the fishermen will charge a higher price per fish. This cost will be incurred by all the citizens in town. Subsequently, the supply-driven inflation of fish will require people to forego other types of consumption of goods and services, leading to a lower quality of life and additional hardship. The decreased food and economic security of the town serves as the common cost in this example. Now that we have discussed the commonized cost, we will return to the lake for an in-depth review of the fisherman's decision to privatize profit. While there are multiple parties that fish on the lake, we will pare down our example for simplicity and look at two individuals that fish for a living. One is Zoe, and the other one is Fisherman Bob. Zoe and Fisherman Bob generate income by fishing on the lake. The public lake allows access to everybody, and thus, the fish are free for both individuals, with no direct cost for their immediate, individual fishing activities, and no regulations governing the quantity of fish being caught. Both Zoe and Fisherman Bob are personally incentivized to extract as many fish from the lake as possible. In other words, they will privatize profits from a common, shared resource. Now, both of them will think through how to maximize their profits. They both know that moderate fishing activity will allow for the fish to reproduce and grow their population greater than the current day count. Moderation will lead to a long-term, recurring stream of revenue. In addition, moderation will not lead to a depletion of fish from the lake, and will not inflict the commonized cost of fish inflation onto the town. However, the moderation-based strategy is reliant on all parties' participation. Thus, the outcome to their fishing strategy is dependent on the other person's actions. Let's walk through the decision matrix that Zoe will think through, and explain the rationale for her eventual strategy in this scenario of the tragedy of commons. This decision matrix represents a form of the prisoner's dilemma, where two separated parties must make a decision, but the outcome of their decision will be dependent on the other person's actions. This situation assumes that the ultimate rational action is rooted in self-interest. In this case, the self-interest involves maximizing profit from fishing the lake. Zoe is unconcerned about Fisherman Bob's profit. Her only concern relates to how his actions may impact the outcome of her decision. Zoe and Fisherman Bob are presented with two options. The first option is to ration their fishing activity in order to help preserve the population of fish in the lake. And the second option is to extract as many fish as soon as possible. This will maximize near-term revenue, but diminish long-term profits, and produce a hefty cost on the town's citizens. If both Zoe and Fisherman Bob moderated their fishing activity throughout the year and kept a healthy population in the lake to reproduce, then they would have more fish to catch than if then initially overfished the lake. Zoe and Fisherman Bob would earn $10,000 in this scenario. The outcome is optimal. However, if Zoe decides to preserve the population of fish in the lake and moderate her fishing activities, but Fisherman Bob overfishes, then Zoe would be economically harmed, as she would earn $2,000 from fishing, while Fisherman Bob would earn $8,000, as he will extract all the fish that she chose to preserve. The scenario plays out the same if the roles were changed. The top left quadrant shows the profit that will be earned if both maximize their extraction of fish from the lake and deplete it. They would be fishing at the same pace, with the same intent, thus splitting the population of fish. Both will make $5,000. So what should Zoe do? The optimal outcome would be for the fish in the lake to be preserved. However, this will not likely come to fruition. For Zoe and Fisherman Bob are unaware of each other's activities. And even if Fisherman Bob signaled his intent to preserve, Zoe would be hard-pressed to trust him. There is too much to be lost if Bob ends up overfishing while she moderates her activity. In addition to trust issues, the real-world application of the CCPP game does not involve a pared-down scenario with just 2 players. In reality, there will be many players, thus making it more difficult to understand the activities of others. Ultimately, as a profit-maximizing entity, Zoe will elect to overfish as it has a greater return between the 2 options. She will either make $5,000 or $8,000 from overfishing, an average of $6,500. If she decided to preserve the fish in the lake, she will either make $2,000 or $10,000, which is an average of $6,000. The rational choice for Zoe will be to overfish. Fisherman Bob and all other rational, profit-maximizing parties will do the same, thus fulfilling the CCPP outcome. This last example completes our lesson for the day. I hope you found it helpful, and please have a great day. Thank you for watching this episode of Professor Zach Explains. Please click the subscribe button and check out my other videos. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you soon.